call to order this workshop for the city administrator form of government from our lead counsel with AML. And Christina, would you like to make the introductions?
Today we have with us John Wilkerson, who is going to go over the roles of officials in the city administrator form of government.
You have the floor, John.
Thank you. Thank you. I was talking to Justin Eichman, who's a city attorney out in, well, a lot of places, Springdale. This is probably one of the top 10 nicest days in Arkansas history. It's beautiful out here today. I spent my morning in Bella Vista, so happy to be here. It's always great to have a drive when it's really nice outside. So I'm John Wilkerson. I am General Counsel of the Arkansas Municipal League. I've met many of you over my 17 years at the Municipal League. I started out as a law clerk and then a litigator for a number of years, doing employment work and police work, and now been general counsel for 4 years. I call myself the shorter but better looking version of Mark Hayes. So don't laugh too hard at that, by the way, because but I'm happy to be here. It's obviously our role at the Municipal League is to help cities and towns across Arkansas do whatever it is that y'all want to do, hopefully within the bounds of the law, of course, which by and large everybody does. But we're here to give any guidance that you may need, and we're always here to help no matter what you need. But of course, today I'm here to talk about really the roles of the city officials in a city administrator form of government. You should know, you already know this, you are very unique. You're one of 3 city administrator forms of government, Fort Smith and Barling being the other 2. There's 5 city manager forms of government, Texarkana, Hope, Arkadelphia, Hot Springs, and Little Rock, although Little Rock is more of a strong mayor city manager form of government. It's very unique in the state. But city managers and city administrators are more or less very similar in a lot of ways, but there's some key distinctions that I'll touch on just really quickly as well. So this is the code. I obviously didn't print out the entire code section from the state law, but you're in 1448 101 et sec. So 101 all the way through 131 is where where the city administrative form of government laws really are contained. So it goes all the way here through the authorization to create a city administrative form of government, to how you organize, how you reorganize if you decide to reorganize as a mayor-council form of government, the election of directors and mayors, the powers of the mayors, the duties of the mayor, the assistant mayor or vice mayor if you choose to have one, what happens in the absence of a mayor, vacancies, city administrator powers and authorizations, how the board meetings work, and then some other just general laws that come to, how you set a budget and the audit procedures, or the fact that you have an audit, bid requirements, so on and so forth. So if you're ever curious about what the roles are under the code, it's in 1448, section 101 through section 131. The board of directors, again, as you probably know, is the legislative and executive body of the city, subject to the powers of the mayor, which the mayor has, veto power and a couple of other things here and there. But the board of directors, of course, is the legislative and executive body of the city, which is, again, in most cities, it's the city council is pretty much purely the legislative body. So again, that's a pretty unique distinction here for city administrator forms of government. A majority of the elected membership of the board of directors constitutes a quorum for the transaction of business. Obvious, but I do want to key on this really quickly. There's a case that you've probably heard of. If you've heard me talk about the FOI, I call it the El Dorado case. It's a El Dorado Broadcasters versus the City of El Dorado. And what the City of El Dorado case talks about is that not only is the law that the quorum has to conduct business, but any meetings of 2 or more council members or board members could constitute a meeting. And the reason I bring this up every chance I get is that FOIA requires city business to be done in public. And so, like the city administrative form of government, like any form of government in Arkansas, when it comes to cities and towns, it's a majority of the body as a whole that's conducting the business officially. And so if 2 or more members are talking about city business outside of a public meeting, you run the risk of violating FOIA. And the idea is that all public business should be done in public. Again, I say this to everybody because it's a lot of times we get this question about, well, what if 2 council members go to the coffee shop and talk about the new wastewater treatment plant? Well, if it's coming up for a vote, then it's probably going to be considered a meeting. And I only mention it again because it's been a very big issue at the legislature the last, forever. And there's constant attempts to try to make sure that it's very clear that 2 or more members who meet, period, constitutes a meeting. So keep in mind that if you're meeting one-on-one with each other or with the mayor, presumably that you run the risk of violating the FOI. And so I just always want to mention that to folks. The mayor is, in the city administrative form of government, is the head of the city government for all ceremonial purposes and by the governor for purposes of military law. So if you ever have to impose martial law, mayor, you're the marshalitarian or whatever they want to call themselves. So the mayor is the head of the city government for those ceremonial purposes, but also the mayor is the one that signs all written agreements, contracts, bonds, mortgages, pledges, indentures, only if those are approved by the board, of course. So the board, again, is the legislative and executive body. This is not terribly different than mayor council forms of government. In mayor council forms of government, the city council is the body that sets the budget and sets what can be spent and what can't be spent. And so again, it's very similar to the mayor council form of government. But the mayor is the person that signs those agreements, contracts, bonds, etc. The mayor also serves as the chair of the board and shall preside at the regular and special meetings of the board. Of course, has no vote on this. Of course, you all know this. And veto over all decisions made by the board except those personnel matters. I know there's some issues about what veto all decisions meant recently. I think y'all got that sorted out, I hope. But the mayor, of course, has the veto power when it comes to all matters except personnel matters. Now, the city administrator, again, other than city managers, is a very unique position in Arkansas. It's not as uncommon across the country, but it is very uncommon for Arkansas. So the asterisks, I have this list of duties that are prescribed in the law. The ones with asterisks are the ones that I say that the words I use are to the extent that such authority is vested by the board. So the city administrator may supervise and control all administrative departments, agencies, offices, and employees. If the authority is vested by the board, may contract for and purchase for services to be rendered at the discretion of the board or with the approval of the board, may approve for payment out of funds previously provided for by the board, again, if the authority is vested by the board, may sell or exchange municipal supplies, materials, or equipment, again, if that authority is vested by the board, may transfer property between departments, again, if that authority is vested by the board. On top of that, aside from what authority is vested by the board, the city administrator may inquire into the conduct of any municipal office, department, or agency. This one is again, there's not a lot of laws that really deal with what the mayor's role is in city government or what the council's role is in city government. And so one of the things that we deal with a lot when it comes to mayor-council forms of government is what can the mayor do or not do when it comes to running a city day to day. We pretty much know how it works, but the law is not always clear on what that is. When it comes to city administrator, it is that the city administrator, regardless of what you say or not say, has the ability to inquire into all municipal offices and agencies and whatnot. That's unique under Arkansas law, but it's spelled out for the city administrator, and that makes sense. The city administrator is the de facto, well, not de facto, but y'all have chosen the city administrator to at least help run the city, if not almost entirely run the city, at your discretion and at your guidance, of course. The city administrator also shall prepare and submit the municipal budget and be responsible for its administration after adoption. And again, it's kind of a mayor role in a mayor-council form of government. And of course, the city administrator shall keep the board advised of the financial condition and future needs of the city, and of course, make recommendations to y'all on how the city should, go forward with any decisions that y'all think that you might end up making at any point in time. And then, of course, the city administrator shall perform additional duties and exercise additional powers as may, by ordinance, be lawfully delegated by the board. Again, you're getting a theme here that the board is, again, the legislative and executive branch of the city, and the city administrator acts, of course, at your discretion and under your guidance, but the city administrator is very clearly designed under Arkansas law to be that person that runs to shorthand it, runs the day-to-day operations of the city. That's what you hire somebody to do and what you pay someone to do year in and year out. Now, the delegation of authority, this is from a AG opinion. Again, just to kind of bolster my point, the board of directors in a city administrator form of government may delegate authority to the city administrator. Again, the law is designed that you delegate a lot of these authorities to the city administrator. I know you know this, but when you're talking about the actual law that talks about city administrator forms of government, this is something I always like to point to, that it is by design that y'all delegate a lot of authority, vast majority of authority to the city administrator, vast majority of authority when it comes to day-to-day operations. Now, in the Siloam Springs City Code, I found 158 references to the city administrator, 158 sections of code that deal with the city administrator. I have not read all of these sections, of course, but it shows you the breadth of powers that you have delegated to the city administrator. And we're talking anything from, there's a couple in the Parks and Recs section of code. There's 6 references in the solid waste section of code. There's 15 in the businesses section of code and 18 in the administration. So you've already delegated a lot of these authorities to the city manager. So again, 158 sections of code in Siloam Springs is already dedicated to delegating authority to the city administrator. But there is one in particular I want to discuss really quickly, and I'm not sure how much time you wanted me to take up, but I didn't want to take up too much of your time, and hopefully if you have any questions or topics you want to discuss further, I'm happy to help. But in section 2.7 or 2-7 of your Code of Ordinances, it says that the city administrator shall have full power and responsibility concerning the employment, disciplining, and termination of employment of all non-elected officials, and actually go ahead and say gives this authority for heads of city departments as well. Now, obviously, this is subject to the budgets that you've set out for these positions, and whatever other issues that you have set out or to limit this. But this one's a big one for me, and I talk about this one quite a bit when it comes to, and this is mayor, council, forms of government, city administrator, whatever the form of government is. I really harp on this because as an employment lawyer, I've seen this issue in particular be an issue for cities. And I asterisk this at the bottom with the case Leaphart versus Russellville. Leaphart versus Russellville is a case brought, of course, by Ms. Leaphart against the city of Russellville. Now, Ms. Leaphart had been terminated, depends on how you look at it, but she had been terminated from her employment as the HR director. What the city council had done was that they had eliminated the HR director position, which is under the mayor as a department head, and they had created a new HR position or a liaison position to the city council. When she was terminated, which, for lack of a better word, was true, she sued the city of Russellville and each of the individual city council members as well. Now, the reason I harp on this a lot is because of what I learned about this area of law in this case. Because the city council members of Russellville acted in their legislative capacity, they were entitled to legislative immunity, which means that their personal assets were never at stake. They were never sued. They were sued individually, but I was able to get them dismissed. Had to go to the 8th Circuit to get it done, but I was able to get them dismissed individually and left the case really only against the city. So what Leaphart what I use Leaphart to do is a cautionary tale. I'll be honest with you. Now, Russellville city council members were entitled to immunity. But what happens when city councils or boards get involved in personnel decisions on a day-to-day basis, when they make decisions in regards to personnel decisions, like deciding to terminate somebody or disciplining somebody or suspending somebody or reducing somebody's pay, when you make that decision as a body, there's a couple of problems that happen. One is it makes it very difficult to litigate the case because, I'm not going to call out names, but say board member 1, whoever that is, or 3, whatever it is. Board member 1 is the one that knows most about, let's say it's public works. Board member 1, for whatever reason, says, you know what, I love public works. I want to get to know the street department folks, and I want to get to know sanitation. I just love public works. That's my thing. That's my bailiwick. And there's council people, as you know, board members that like particular, segments of city government, better than others. They just relate better to that particular area. So let's say board member number 1 loves public works, knows the ins and outs to the degree that they can of public works. So they decide, for whatever reason, the city council says, we're going to make hiring and firing decisions. So what could happen is that the employment decision comes to the board as a whole. Board member number 1 knows a fair amount about it and then says that the person should be fired. Let's say you go into executive session, have this discussion, of course, all the usual stuff, and you come out and you terminate the person. But board member number 1 is really the only one that has a lot of firsthand knowledge of it. Now, the city's being sued, and you're being sued individually, but really is only board member number 1 that really had the most information. But now, at depositions, board member number 6 is being deposed for why did you terminate this person, because I, as a plaintiff's attorney, put myself in that role, think that the termination was based on some sort of discrimination. Well, board member number 6, I believe it's discrimination. Tell me why it wasn't discrimination. And now board member number 6 is like, board member number 1 told me right? So they're having to answer for themselves and for the city at the same time, but they don't have a lot of information because they're not there in the day-to-day grit, grind, muck of these employment matters. So that causes a lot of problems when we get to these types of litigation. So because boards and councils are typically removed from that, the day-to-day employment matters, it becomes difficult to litigate that case and for the board itself to know all the ins and outs of why somebody was terminated. But the bigger issue is that if you make termination decisions, you will be sued individually. And there is no immunity because what you do day to day, what you do at city council or board meetings, when you pass a pit bull ban, let's say do you have a pit bull ban, by the way? Okay. Let's say you decide, let's have a pit bull ban. And everybody gets together and they say, okay, 4-3, we're going to have a pit bull ban. Well, somebody says, that's unconstitutional. You can't ban my pit bulls. It's a violation of the Constitution. They would sue the city, and they'd try to sue each one of you, even though 3 of you voted against the ban. I would then say, no. That's a legislative action. They are entitled to immunity personally for their legislative actions. But employment matters are administrative actions. When you start acting in an administrative capacity, you lose that immunity. So my largest point is that when you're, and I'm sorry I harp on this, but Lee Part was 10 years ago now, so I've lived this case for a long time. When you're involved in employment matters, you run the risk of having yourself sued individually, which is uncomfortable, I can tell you, say the least. And you also run the risk of having it difficult at depositions or in trial explaining why the decision you made was not based on discrimination, because you don't know, you're not in the day-to-day muck and grime and grit of day-to-day employment matters at public works or animal control or whatever it is. So I talk a lot about roles. City councils, boards of directors have very broad roles, very vast roles, and you have a lot of authority to do what you want to do. We all know that. But employment matters are something that I would very much caution against diving into, because you lose that immunity, and it's very hard to make employment decisions when you're on. I mean, y'all meet twice a week or twice a month. Yeah, it's tough to make these employment decisions. When you're only hearing city business every 2 weeks. So that's my soapbox on the employment matters, and that's really all I have about the roles. Happy to answer any questions to the extent that I can, but y'all run a city administrative form of government and I don't, so you may know more than I do.
Yes, Carol.
I have a question.
Okay.
When we are in executive session, what can we discuss outside of that executive session?
What can you discuss about the...
Can we discuss with people or citizens what happened in that executive session or not?
I wouldn't. I mean, I think that's the point of the executive session, that you keep things, it's not mandatory you go into executive session. It's just something that you probably want to do to keep these employment matters, in executive session, because a lot of things that you're dealing with, they're sensitive, right? And so that's the purpose of an executive session. So I would not advise coming out of executive session and discussing the details of what was said. Of course, any vote you make, there's no vote that can happen in executive session that would be valid. You have to come out and make that vote. So other than that, that's the one thing, of course, that you have to vote on in public. But
So if we're in an executive session, we're all discussing why we want to do this or why we don't want to do this, this should not be something that we should come out and discuss if a citizen comes out and just sees you on the street, why did you do this?
yeah, I get that question a lot. There's no absolute prohibition against you talking about it, but obviously the law is set up that it is kept confidential or private at the very least. So I never recommend talking about it. That's just, I think it's good advice on the whole. And I will add, sometimes I get this question and saying from somebody who's an employee who believes that the contents of the executive session was talked about, and they ask, can we sue the city for a violation of privacy? And of course I say, listen, I am not advising you on what you to sue the city. I'm not advising you on this. So I don't say anything, but that's a question I get from time to time is, can we sue the city for disclosing what was said in the executive session? I don't think that case would be fruitful, but you don't want to test the boundaries of that either.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Reed.
thank you, John, for coming.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Carol.
And I remember, I've been on this board for quite some time, and we've had others from, and it might have been you from Municipal League, and we were cautioned about not getting involved in employment issues for what you just said.
Yeah, it's probably me again. Yeah.
So I appreciate you reiterating that again.
Yeah, it's real tricky, real quick at best, and yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, Bessie.
Madam Mayor, it used to be that a lot of these department heads were hired and fired by the city administrator with the approval of the board, and that was part of the checks and balances. But now it sounds like you're advising against those checks and balances?
I'm not advising you what to do or what not to do. I'm really talking about department heads are a little bit different because in a mayor-council form of government, the mayor is the one that decides whether to hire and fire a department head. It's really the day-to-day folks that the not rank and file, but non-department heads that really would be really difficult to decide whether or not to hire and fire. Department heads, at least you're a little bit closer to sort of bigger issues, and like maybe there's something in the department itself that you don't like the trajectory of the department. But even then, I would be very leery of getting involved in employment decisions. But that's closer to maybe that's, you do have enough input or enough knowledge base and enough like understanding of where you want the city to go that would make a lot more sense. But I would be very cautious.
Yes.
I don't remember in any recent times that a department head employment was brought to the board to vote on. So I would say that we're not doing that.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, David.
when I was mayor, we had a new fire chief hired, and he was brought to the board for approval after the administrator brought him for recommendation. I was on the board in the 90s, and our administrator at the time informed the whole board that there were 5 positions that were responsible to be hired and fired by the city administrator, but the board had to give approval or disapproval. Had to vote on it, and it was the city attorney, the city clerk, the fire chief, the police chief, and the city administrator was the 5th one.
Mm-hmm.
Our city code, as it stands now, even though what you've brought up, what you put in your slide, was voted in 2017, the city attorney designation is still based upon the old rule that we had been informed was part of the checks and balances of the city charter. And it is section 2-121 says the city attorney designated by the city administrator and approved by the board of directors to act as legal advisor
Right.
to the mayor and board of directors.
Right.
That was informed of us in the 90s and was reinforced by the next administrator when I was mayor. And in fact, there was a personnel selection committee set up by the administrator to do applicants for that new position when we had a fire chief that was retiring, and was brought back to this board for a vote.
Okay.
So it has been precedented that has been the case, and has been reinforced in previous boards that those 5 positions, including the city administrator, were part of the approval or disapproval. Not that they reported to the board whatsoever, but they were only hired and fired by the administrator with the approval of the board. There's been a lot of talk that people are trying to say we want to be having these department heads responsible to us. Couldn't be further from the truth. We don't want anybody responsible to us except city administrator.
Yeah.
But
That's good advice.
one thing that was learned when we had our executive session was that the administrator denied showing a department head file to a board member. Now, my question, and it wasn't me, but I have a question regarding that, in that how is it that we are reinforced by the previous administrator that he is the only one we're responsible for, period, that he's the only one we can go into executive to discuss, period, but yet we give his evaluation at the end of the year? How are we supposed to confirm that his next level down, that he is doing the evaluations of the department heads that report to him, if no one can see the evaluation that he has done on one of the people that report to him? How are we supposed to confirm he's doing his job as part of our evaluation if he refuses to even pull out a file and show it to a board member?
Well, personnel files are tricky. Because under the FOI, they're treated differently than most other public documents. So I don't know that I know the precise answer to your question.
You had just said department heads are considered differently, is why I wondered if there was something.
Yeah, not under the FOI. They're considered differently in the sense that in mayor-council forms of government, only the mayor can hire and fire department heads. Now, it can be overturned by 2/3 vote of the council. So they're usually set aside as different. But in Siloam Springs, apparently, according to the code, they're sort of similar in the sense of who has this up or down of the hiring and firing of the department head.
But this is only city code. This is not state law, right? What you put up here.
Right. It's just city
City
code.
code.
Right.
City voted on, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was just a question that I was surprised that I wasn't sure how we're supposed to confirm that part of the job is being done if there's no ability to actually check on that. There was one thing, John, I was hoping you could touch on, was conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. There's been a great deal of confusion on conflict of interest with the previous administrator. When I was on in the 90s, someone, and it may have been your boss, came and spoke, and we had a meeting on conflict and what was the definition of conflict. And I'll never forget the thing he explained was, it's the conflict or the perception of conflict. It's not just if there is conflict, but if the general public would perceive that there is a possibility of conflict,
Sure.
then you must abstain because of the possibility that it looks like there is conflict of interest.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know that the law says that if an appearance of a conflict. I think the law mentions the actual conflict. Of course, you can always waive a conflict by ordinance, depending on what it is. Like, I mean, if you know, for instance, we had this question a lot that can a city council member who runs the only tree trimming business in the city, can they have a contract for the tree trimming business for the city? And there's a way that the city council, we're not huge fans of this, but there's a way that the city can waive that conflict by ordinance by establishing that there is no conflict. The person doesn't vote on it, of course. But it kind of depends on what you're talking about exactly. But the law does talk about actual conflicts, correct?
Well, in between my times on the board, there was a situation where you had 3 board members that all worked for the same facility. And were told that it was not a conflict to give that employer $500,000. And that they could vote on that. And that was a little surprising to a lot of people amongst the citizens.
Yeah, again, I mean, it depends on the circumstances. I mean, I think the law, Caleb's back there, maybe he has the law handy, but I think the law says something like if you have an actual interest in the contract itself. And so we have this question a lot too. Like if you're just you're an administrative assistant for the CEO of a company and the company's getting the business, is the administrative assistant close enough that it would create, that he or she would have some actual pecuniary interest in the conflict as well. So it really depends on the situation. And oh, thank you. Yeah.
Got the big book.
Yeah. So, so a council member, official, or municipal employee shall not be interested directly or indirectly in the profits of any contract for furnishing supplies, equipment, so on and so forth. So it's that question of directly or indirectly. What does that mean? Is the administrative assistant for the CEO indirectly involved in, getting some gain from the contract? I don't know. We always advise on having the ordinance to waive any conflict or appearance of conflict. That's our advice all the time, is to do it.
I use the word perception because that's what was told to us, but appearance.
Yeah, the king is above reproach, right? Yeah, it's the same principle.
And then the last thing I had a question was, you said a moment ago you hoped we had figured it out. We never did figure it out. It is still a question to this day of having a mayor veto something that was not actually passed by this board. And of course, we did get the email from the AML saying what it perceived was the actual, the question was the decision. The two conflicting state phrases regarding decision versus something that's actually passed by the board or adopted by the board.
Right.
And the question was brought up mainly for setting a precedence and allowing this to go on in the future. A mayor may veto actions made by the board under 120 and 111, but it seems there was a great deal of question even amongst city staff as to what was true or not true, or what was the conflicting
right.
Simply because I believe everyone with state government believes that it is supposed to be something that has to be approved by the board. You can't veto something that's not been done. I mean, that's a negative of a negative. And it just seems like, that's something that never did get fixed, and it seems like it was something that happened here that's never happened before. And how does that get resolved?
Yeah, well,
because it didn't get resolved. Like you
well,
said,
I should have said resolved. I meant that it's we've moved past it, I guess. But my idea was to re-vote on it just to clear it up, because I have my own. You've read the email, our position on this, but I understand that the counter argument that it does say veto any decision. And the idea that a decision was made to not pass it, I guess makes sense. I suppose. I wouldn't read it that way. That's why I thought just re-vote on it. It's going to fail and then just be done with it. That was my idea, to clear up any confusion and make sure everything's just very clean and you can just, everybody move on about their business. That was my thought, because I thought that was a pretty, just simple way to clean it up and move forward. But, I don't think y'all chose to go that way, which is your prerogative, of course. But that's what I thought to do, because I thought if there's any conflict, any potential different way of looking at it, I thought that would make it clean and just redo it and move on. But
Well, it was not put on the next agenda to reconsider. It was put on the agenda to possibly override the mayor veto, because the mayor veto happened 3 days after the board meeting. But it's still a question in a lot of people's mind, how a veto can occur without the board actually advancing it and forwarding it, and then the contract actually be approved and paid only by mayor approval, and then signed by the city administrator, when state law says only the mayor can sign a contract. I believe Mr. Patterson's justification was that he could sign a contract based upon it was under his spending authority. But nothing in state or city law that I can find says that contract is part of that spending authority.
yeah, I haven't thought about this a whole lot, but I agree with him. I would think the same thing, that it would be part of the mayor's spending, or the city administrator's spending authority, because that's one provision in the code that talks about he or she can spend up to whatever amount that's been designated by the board. So I would have agreed with that too.
But it wasn't brought as that. It was brought as a vote of the board.
Yeah, I don't, I won't, I don't want to get too deep into that, because I don't remember the exact details. Of course, I wasn't here for it, but I do understand that point and agree with him on that. Or at least I would have read it the same way, setting aside the procedural things about the veto and whatnot.
I do have one more question.
Yes, Carol.
Are you done, David?
Yeah. go
Okay.
ahead.
Is there any disciplinary action when more than 2 or more board members get together and discuss something outside that's on an agenda that is discussed outside of the boardroom?
Yeah, the prosecutor could charge you with an FOI violation, number one. I think number two, and probably more likely, is that, and we've seen this, Fort Smith's been sued for, Fort Smith did nothing wrong, by the way, I should add that, but Fort Smith got sued for something similar, but it wasn't your question. They did something, they were fine with it. What they did was fine. But if 2 or more board members get together, discuss something on city business, and then go vote on it, my concern has always been that the vote would be invalidated, because a meeting, I shouldn't use air quotes as if it's not a meeting. I mean meeting in the sense of it's a meeting in the FOI occurred that led to the vote, and there could be an argument that the ordinance should be invalidated, or the vote should be invalidated because of that FOIA violation. I've never seen that. I usually see it in the context of what I call daisy chaining, which is, the mayor talks to each board member to get a yes vote, and then they have the vote. I will use air quotes on that, the vote, and it's 7-0, but the mayor had just went around and polled everybody. Then the vote would be invalidated for sure. The 2 or more people, a little bit gray area, but that's my number one concern, that the vote would be invalidated. Of course, number one is you could be charged criminally with a FOIA violation. But really, more than that, the more likely thing is that it's all over Facebook as a FOIA violator, and that's not a good look for any city, of course.
John, can you email us as a board the El Dorado case, or a summary of something? Because I've heard of it, but I don't know except what you brought up here today.
Yeah. By the way, it's the holding is not 2 or more. It's in what we call dicta. It's like it's talked about by the court. It's not the actual holding, but that's what we're very cautious when it comes to the FOIA. So we're very much, we just go with the easiest, or not the easiest, but the strictest rules. And the court has said that's the strictest view of the FOIA. And I should say, FOIA plaintiff's attorneys think that's the rule. So that's most important, that we want to abide by that.
Well, if you have something that you guys refer to, or a summary or something.
Yeah, I'll send you the El Dorado case, and I'll highlight the portion that says this.
I've heard you talk about it, but I don't know the details of it.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Betsy.
The daisy chain thing you talked about with the mayor, does that apply to the city administrator?
Yeah, applies to me.
Okay.
If I were, I mean, I learned this lesson long ago when I dealt with settlements. I would call each board member. So let's say I actually had a few Siloam Springs cases in my days, and I don't think we ever settled the one. But if I settled the one, I would call each board member and say, "Look, I'm coming to the council or the board tomorrow to present a settlement offer. This is the facts of the case. This is the amount that is on the table. I do not want to know what you're voting on. If you have any questions about what's happening, you can ask me now or ask me in the board meeting, but I am not asking you for your vote." If I were to say, "Ms. Hunt, you vote yes. Mr. Wiles, Blair, all right, we're good." That if I got your vote, that would be daisy chaining. So yeah, it applies to anybody that's sort of creating this meeting.
Okay. What about each of the directors meeting with the city administrator before board meetings to go over everything? I mean, to me, that takes away the discussion in front of the public. I mean, is there anything?
No, typically, it's really members of the governing body. So again, if the city administrator were asking you for your vote so that he or she knew what the vote would be, that's different. But the law allows discussions for informational purposes. And the idea is just if you want to spend time understanding an issue so you can talk better about it at the council meeting or board meeting, that's okay. But it's the requesting a vote and trying to know what somebody's voting on. That's the real issue. When it comes to this city administrator or me or public works department guy or whatever it is talking to one of you, when you two get together, that's a different story. That's where the law does not allow board members to talk one-on-one, or at least under the El Dorado case implies that, about city business.
We actually had an incumbent city board member running for a second term do an interview for the paper and was asked, "How do you make decisions on issues before the city?" And he was quoted in the newspaper saying, "I meet with Mr. Patterson, he tells me how to vote on each issue."
Well,
I think that's what Betsy is referring
Yeah,
to, individual board members meeting with the administrator and him informing, "This is what I want," because that's what was said by this former board member.
I would have to admit that I meet with administrator, not only the previous one, but every one we've had prior to a board meeting. I
Yeah.
have never been asked, "How are you going to vote?" And I have never said, "This is how I'm going to vote."
that's the distinction. Yeah.
I have just been there to get answers to questions that I have about what is on the agenda.
Yeah, that's a
And
key
it-
distinction.
It keeps the board going in a smooth fashion and not taking hours to have a board meeting.
Right.
I see nothing wrong with what I do.
Sounds like it's for informational purposes. Right. I mean, informational purposes that's
But I
okay.
see no problem with having a board meeting take hours in order to make sure the board and the public is thoroughly informed.
Absolutely agree with that too.
And if having an individual meeting with the administrator is simply to make things go smoothly so that he knows and everyone else knows how this is going to be unanimous, that's not really open to the public for discussion.
Every question I've ever asked a city administrator, I have asked in the meeting.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I don't know if you can answer this. Fort Smith is a city administrator form of government, correct?
Yes.
Just from reading about them, my understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they have a pre-meeting before the board meeting to discuss stuff. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know that, but there are cities that have these. Rogers, for instance, has these separate committee meetings. They're open to the public, of course. They notify the press, and public can be there. But yeah, that'd be okay. Again, meetings are fine. You can have meetings every day for the rest of your life if you want to, as long as the press is notified of them. So yeah, that wouldn't surprise me that they have a pre-meeting. But again, it's you call it a pre-meeting. It's really a meeting before the regular scheduled board meeting. Yeah.
A planning meeting.
Yeah, or a business meeting like we're doing right now. I mean, it's just a different time to business meeting. Again, as long as the public's notified, You can talk, you can meet whenever you want to. With 2 hours notice, by the way, on a special meeting, but.
Anyone else? I just have one question just for clarification whenever we were talking about the conflict of interest. So it kind of goes back to if the director that's voting would receive monetary gain, does that play into that? Is that?
That's a pretty bright line rule, yeah, if they get direct monetary gain. But it's not just that.
Right.
And it's not quite appearance, but in your sort of, what you're talking about, the indirect, it may be where the appearance comes in. I mean, it has to be an indirect gain of some sort. And you may want to default to if it looks conflicty, then just, waive it, just to be sure. Be clear in what you're waiving, by the way. Don't just say, we resolve all conflicts. There is no such thing as a conflict in the city of Siloam Springs. Don't do that. Do something very specific, like when we're talking about a tree trimming contract. Board member number 1 has a tree trimming business and he's going to bid for this contract. We do not believe there's a conflict because this, and this. We're going through all the procedures to make sure there's no conflict. But yeah, direct monetary gain is a very clear one.
Madam,
Yeah, well, yeah, and recusing from the vote, of course, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you recuse yourself from a vote, do you need to state why you are recusing, or is it all right if they just say, I am recusing myself?
I think you can just say I'm recusing, but I appreciate the knowledge, and legislators do this from time to time where they recuse off a vote. It's always nice to know why, just because I'm curious, but I don't believe it's necessary.
All right, thank you. Betsy?
the state statute says, because we changed our board rules to match the state statute this year, for conflict of interest, and it says, like, if your spouse, your business partner, your child, whatever would benefit, then it's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I mean, it seems fair.
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, you hadn't mentioned those, so I just
Yeah, I don't-
kind of wanted to clarify.
It's not in the statute I'm looking at right now.
Okay, there is one where
Yeah.
it's very clear exactly what's allowed and what's not. Because I was told during my training, if I could look myself in the mirror and be okay with it, then I could vote, which that's great if you have strong ethics and morals. My thought when I was told that was, oh, well, Ted Bundy, I'm sure he looked himself in the mirror and felt great about it. So, yeah, that was one reason we changed the rules to match the state, so it is way more clear.
Right.
Right. Anyone else? Christina, do you have comment of any kind?
The only comment that I wanted to make, or from earlier, and this was actually much earlier, related to the hiring of those 5 individuals. And we went back, staff has gone back through every ordinance change to look and see how it was structured previously. And the only authority that the board had was to confirm a hire in the city ordinances. And that was the extent of the authority of the board.
It was confirmation only. Okay.
Of hiring.
Of
only.
hiring, right.
Do y'all have any, by the way, just a question, do y'all have any appeal process of sorts where employment matters come to y'all just for appeals? Okay, I don't recommend it, by the way. I'm just kind of curious as to whether you did. And then you have no civil service commission either, right?
No.
Okay. I didn't think you did, but I just want to make sure.
Anyone else?
John,
Yes.
you mentioned the word recuse. State law, it's yes, no, or I know, and abstain. The first year I was here, I used the word abstain. And Mr. Patterson called me and said that Renee was about to type the notes or the minutes and wanted to give me a chance to change my vote. He wanted it to be recuse, because that's what he preferred. And I said, well, that's not state law. He said that he prefers people to get up and leave the room and recuse themselves because of his 30 years experience where he worked before, it was the best way that it worked. By all understanding I've ever understood with state law and my previous experience here, you abstain, you cannot speak about whatever's being discussed, and you are supposed to give the reason, relationship, employer, whatever. But he never insisted on recuse ever again because it was not state law. It was simply something he wanted the board to do, and therefore the board that was here or came in when he was hired was instructed as to what he preferred. But abstain is the word that by state law, and no one's required to leave their room. But
didn't
you are
suggest
supposed
otherwise.
to give a reason, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know the reason part. I don't. Well, you may have me there. Maybe I missed
I
that.
think it's just a simple, whether it's
Yeah,
a relationship or whatever.
I don't know if that's the case or not legally. I don't remember that statute, but I do believe it's. I think it's best practice, personally. And a lot of things that we do in city government, I get this all the time. People are asking me, what can we do? What can we not do? I'm like, well, listen, it's best practice. This law, y'all are lucky. You have a lot of statutes that deal. I mean, city manager, city government, or city mayor, council form of government does too. But you have a lot more statutes dictating exactly what you can and can't do. That's not the case for mayor council. It's sort of Katie bar the door sometimes on what you can do, and you do the best you can. So
Vagueness, is it too vague? Is that what you're?
I wouldn't say it's too vague. I would say that it's too incomplete to know exactly what to do in every situation.
Yeah.
And so you just sort of follow in the best practices. Can you look yourself in a mirror and say it's okay? I'm just kidding. You're right about that, by the way. That's not a good metric. But yeah, it's incomplete. And because cities do a lot of stuff, as y'all know. I mean, they're day in, day out. The impact you have on citizens far exceeds any other level of government. And so we do the best we can with what we have.
Well, what you were originally asked about based upon your slides, I have never heard of a board member attempting to get involved in the day-to-day personnel matters of any
Oh, good.
employee. Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
The question had come up based upon precedents of giving approval for hiring and firing of those 5 positions only. That was the only.
Yeah. Again, I mean, you certainly can do that. I'm not suggesting you can't. I mean, you can do whatever you want to. I mean, you're the legislative and executive board or body of the city. But when you're going down that road of approval or non-approval, be leery and be very clear as to what you know and what you don't know and why you're making your decision, because you do run the risk of losing that immunity. That is,
I don't think it's
valuable.
disapproval. I think it's approval. The hiring and firing is decided by the city administrator with the approval. So if he's going to fire someone, the board has to back him up.
So it's on the city. Yeah. So the way I take it is, yes, the board had a role in it, but the city administrator is the one that actually did the firing.
The actual choice.
That would be my argument to try to get y'all out of it. But that's a little bit murky. So I would be careful when you're going down that road is all I'm saying. But yeah, absolutely. Day to day on employees, I would very much stay clear of that.
You don't want the city administrator to hire someone that the board doesn't have full confidence is the right person. If you have a fire department or police chief or whatever, you certainly want to be able to have the board have a say, since the board is elected by the people.
No, I wouldn't go that far because I don't know. I don't know what you want. I know the law allows that it says the city administrator can have full control over personnel matters. So I'm not saying what you should or shouldn't do. I see both sides of it. You may not want to have any say in it. Say, you know what, city administrator, good to go. But your head's on the chopping block if you hire the wrong person's police chief, right? I mean, that's the ultimate control. So I wouldn't agree with you because I don't know what you want as a city.
Sounds like a party.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
John. We appreciate you being here. And with that, we will adjourn this workshop. We will reconvene at 6:35. Call to order this regular Board of Directors meeting for the Siloam Springs Board of Directors, May 2nd, 2023. Roll call.
Blair,
Here.
Smiley,
Here.
Wiles, Hunt,
Here.
Rissler, Allen,
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
At this time, if you all will please stand with me as Director Hunt leads us in prayer, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for the city we live in, for the citizens that live in it, and Lord, I thank you for this beautiful weather that we've been having. I also just pray that the discussions that we have tonight and the decisions we make all will glorify and honor you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time is public input. If there is anyone that would like to address the board on any item that is not on our regular agenda, you may come to the podium, give us your name, your physical address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Arthur Holbert, 20705 Highway 16, Siloam Springs Chamber of Commerce President, CEO. Just want to say thank you guys, and I appreciate the community collaborative effort we had with the Dogwood Festival. Huge crowds, and it really was a collaborative effort with the Chamber of the City. I want to thank the police, the fire, the sanitation, water, sewer, administration, the electric department, so many people, Parks and Recreation. I could probably go on and on and on. But anyway, it was a great collaborative effort. Huge crowds came. It was the first taste a lot of people had of Siloam Springs, and it was a great one. And I just want to publicly thank everyone for being a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur.
Stacy Morris, Main Street, Siloam Springs, 16689 Old Highway 68. Madam Mayor and Board, I just wanted to share a few things with you this evening. Our program is hosting the Main Street, Arkansas second quarter training today and tomorrow. 30 program directors from around the state are in our community, learning more about our program, enjoying our downtown, and we'll get some really good training tomorrow. Friday, May 5th, we are hosting our main event downtown disco at the Brick Ballroom. And Saturday morning, May 6th, at 8 a.m., the Outdoor Farmers Market opens for the season.
Oh, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Kelsey Howard, 312 South College Street. Wanted to start by thanking and just showing some appreciation to the Herald Leader. Y'all have done a great job of representing what has been going on in the city meetings, and there's been a lot to cover. And that's, there's so much interest shown by so many people showing up physically, but also watching online. So just thank you for that coverage. I've got the April 26th newspaper from the Herald Leader, and it's funny because it actually reminded me of something that I'd presented to the board, and I appreciated how you all summarized that. I had said that in the letter that Philip Patterson had put in the Herald Leader, saying that he was, thanking the city, that he believed that the reason that he was fired was because the board was looking for different leadership, and he outlined all the things that he was not fired for. There was nothing egregious, no reasons of that nature of why he was terminated. And so I do understand if for some of you who say that you cannot discuss personnel matters. So this is interesting to me, since Mr. Patterson outlines there's nothing that I'm embarrassed about. There's no reason, no egregious reason for why I was terminated. But it looks like it's just a different direction was wanted. So what I had asked of you all in the last city board meeting, I said, I'd love to know, what is your vision for the city? And I'm specifically talking to the 4 board members who voted to terminate Mr. Patterson. So I'm not talking to the 3 who voted not to terminate. So of those 4, 2 of which are here this evening, I would just like to ask again what I had asked at the last meeting, which is I would love to know what is your vision for the direction of the city. I'm not asking you to divulge personnel issues. I'm not asking you to divulge the specific reasons that were discussed in private in executive session before Mr. Patterson was terminated. I would like to know what is the different leadership that you all are looking for? What is the different direction that you'd like the city to go that Mr. Patterson was not taking the city? Quickly, second, I just wanted to say to everyone listening that there are a lot of people still collecting signatures on the petition for recall. And there's still several people, concerned citizens, who are going door to door. But these conversations that are meaningful take a lot of time. So please do your civic responsibility. If you are also in support of the recall, please go to Ivoryville, Two Gals Junk, or Heart of the Home to sign the petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Casey Letelier, 610 East Delaware Street. Madam Mayor, Board. Siloam Springs has been my home since 1996, but I still have family who live in Minnesota, Oklahoma, and another city here in Arkansas. As I grew old enough to start having sort of conversations with my siblings and my father about our experiences of city governance, I realized we were having very different conversations. They talked a lot about undisciplined, unmotivated city employees, huge swings in policy after every election, arbitrary decisions, and all of them live in cities that are strong mayor council forms of government. So it wasn't until later that I realized that we have a different form of government that has insulated us from all those kinds of arbitrary ways of being. And it's made just an amazing difference in my experience of interacting with city employees, various heads of departments. As my wife and I started our business, we've found professional, motivated people in every level of city governance. So in that context, the firing of Philip Patterson, our city administrator, without cause gives me a great deal of concern, anxiety, feeling like that represents an erosion of the separation between board of directors, mayor, and a city administrator's ability to do their job without undue political influence. We can't just go on. We can't just paper this over. As much as I know a lot of people would prefer we did. The only way to address this is to address this imbalance. And so for that reason, I would urge you to help sign the petition to recall. Let's recall the board of directors who are undermining the separation between our form of government. As a business owner, this is incredibly important to me. I feel like this is not how I would prefer to spend my time. I have a lot of beer to make, and I would rather be doing that. But this is important enough to me that I am here and asking for your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Blake Jones, 1105 East Courage. So I just came today. Usually I have something to say. I just have some questions. And the questions are, if I had 2 individuals, they told the police on the dash cam video at 1 hour, 29 minutes and 40 seconds into the video that they had purchased a knife to use to murder me. And those police officers heard their testimony directly. And on their witness statement, both those individuals said that they did that. And yet, when those officers heard that, they refused to arrest them. So if I was to buy a weapon and say I was going to buy it in advance of things, and then I told any of you directors, if I told the police, told you I was going to murder you, and then I came and sat outside your house every day, all hours of the day and the night, would you find that unnerving? Would you find that illegal? Because I do, and that's what this individual does daily. I've reported it over and over and over. And our great police, I'd like to thank them for doing absolutely nothing. They allow this individual to sit there repeatedly. They don't arrest him. They don't do anything. So if you wouldn't like it, I just wonder why I have to like it. So these are the questions I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. Jeff Farmer, 21923 Davidson Road here in Siloam Springs. Now I live outside the city limits, but my fence goes right up against the city limits. And I wanted to tell you that I'm not a fan of this final plat approval for Mission Hills due to drainage. And I'm not the only one, but due to drainage and fences and I had all this lined up, doggone it. Well, anyway, there's some things that hasn't been done.
Okay.
Okay.
So, this is an item on the agenda?
It is.
And yes, sir, it is.
But I hadn't talked to anybody, just wanted to make sure it got pulled out and talked about.
Absolutely.
Thank
It
you.
will be on the agenda for discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not, is there anyone that would like to address an item that is on our consent agenda for tonight? If not, we will move on to the consent agenda. A, workshop minutes, April 18, 2023. Item B, regular meeting minutes, April 18, 2023. Item C, dedication of utility easements and right-of-way, 2662 Bruce Rutherford Road. Item D, dedication of utility easements, 1300 to 1800 block of North Dogwood Street and the 1000 block of Cheri Whitlock Street. Item E, dedication of utility easements, 1912 Highway 412 East and 1771 East Kenwood Street. Item F, land deed, drainage, grading, utility and right-of-way easement for Friendship Community Care Incorporated, Cheri Whitlock Drive to North Lincoln Street. Item G, dedication of access easement, 2400 to 2600 block of East Kenwood Street. Item H, replacement of dispatch consoles and communication center remodel, Police Department, Communications Division, $150,000. That is the consent agenda. Directors, is there any item that you would like to have pulled from this agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is our contracts and approvals. First is ground lease for the airport, DDB Investments. James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Board. James Harris, Community Services Manager. Tonight, I'm bringing you a ground lease for your guys' consideration for approval for out at the airport with DDB Investments. This one here is for an 80 by 155 foot new hangar to be built, and that will be at that location there at the airport. It will be for a 25-year lease with with an option for a 10-year renewal, and then it will start out at 14 cents per square foot, and that will increase upon consumer pricing index throughout the lease. And then at the end of the lease, the building and all the fixtures will come back to the city as it is a ground lease. And with that, I am open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Directors, any questions or comments for James? If there is none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this ground lease agreement? If not, I will come back to the directors and ask for a motion to approve the ground lease for the airport DDB Investments.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Finn,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is item J, which is another ground lease for the airport, P&P Holdings LLC. James?
All right, Madam Mayor, Board, James Harris, Community Services Manager, bringing to you a second ground lease for consideration with P&P Holding. This one is for a 90 by 80 new hangar to be built. This will be to the west of the last hangar ground lease that we approved in February. So there's not a current building beside it there at this moment. It'll be for a 90 by 80 at the same terms as the existing ground leases for the 25-year with the chance for the 10-year renewal. They'll start out at 14 cents per square foot. That will increase upon consumer pricing index throughout the term of the lease. And staff is available for any questions that you may have.
Directors? Comments or questions? Anyone in the audience that has comments or questions concerning this lease? If not, I will ask for a motion to approve the ground lease for P&P Holdings LLC.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, James. Next, under ordinances, Ordinance 23-08, second reading, amend Chapter 38 of the City Municipal Code for the sale and use of fireworks. And our fire chief is not here tonight, so our fire marshal, Dustin, are you here? You have the floor, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Dustin Kendall, Fire Marshal with the city. So this is just in line with what the board had asked us to reevaluate by reducing the days or the hours, if you will, for the fireworks to be shot off in the city. And so much like the last reading, we felt like it was a good compromise to do it this way. Going from the 1st to the 3rd of July, it'd be from noon to 9 p.m. instead of 10. And then on the 4th, you'd be able to shoot fireworks from noon to 11 p.m. instead of midnight. Anyway, we have not had any comments from any citizens at staff level, so I'm available for any questions if you all have any.
Thank you. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
I just have a point of clarification. I thought it said here to limit the hours that fireworks are allowed to be used each day between the hours of noon and 10 each day, but did you say on the 4th they would go till 11?
That is correct, right, Jay?
Is it 10 or 11 on the 4th?
I've got 11. It was originally till midnight on the 4th.
I think the ordinance says 10.
Does it? Did we move it all to 10?
The memo says 10.
Yes.
I don't know where in the ordinance it is. Okay, on the dates of July 2 through
Oh, it
July
is
4.
the 10.
Between
It
the
is
hours of
10.
12 and 10. Okay.
I misspoke. I apologize.
Okay,
Goes
thank
to-
you.
It goes to 1 a.m. on December 31st, which is the
Yeah.
same. That's not changed, right?
That is not changing.
Okay. December, goes till 1 a.m. on January 1st?
I believe so.
December 31st, so January 1st being
First, yep.
1 a.m.
1
and
a.m.
the, okay.
Correct.
Anyone else? Is there anyone in the audience that has comments about this ordinance? Yes, sir.
James McGuirk, 412 West University Street. I would like to tell everybody that my wife and I, are not in favor of the fireworks at all. And I would like to play you something that we recorded last 4th of July. That was a 5-minute recording that we did. We have 2 dogs that this just scares the heck out of them, and it takes us over a week to get them to calm back down and to even go outside. This is just a portion of what we hear on the 4th of July, the 3rd of July, the 2nd of July, and I don't think you should be shooting fireworks off in this city at all. I have a couple of veterans that live by me, and I know one of them, it scares him to death to hear this kind of noise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, directors, back to you. Any comments or questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
I have been against the shooting off of fireworks in the city from the beginning. I think the number one goal of a city government has always been the safety of its citizens. And I do not believe that the request to shoot them off, the enjoyment by some citizens, not all, is worth the risk of a house fire or someone being killed in a house fire. We can say all we want that, oh, it's not going to happen. It creates a mess in the streets. It's done in the streets. It's done in neighborhoods. And we can say bottle rockets aren't allowed. It doesn't matter. There are fireworks that still go up in the air and can land on people, shake shingle roofs or any other part of a house that can catch on fire. We can say, oh, we can call the police and they'll catch them. They don't catch them. They rarely catch anybody because by the time the police get to wherever it's called, the people are gone. Not to mention the calls I get and heard at the last board meeting, how many people on this board have pets that go hyper with the noise of fireworks. I don't think it is worth the offset of what people have requested over the years that they be able to do it. And I think if it went to a public vote, it would be resoundingly shot down. So I would like to make a motion that we repeal the entire ordinance. I think that the fire department has done a great job of following through and adjusting this based upon board and staff recommendations. And I don't think that they could have done any better than what they've done, but I think the real solution is just to repeal the shooting off of fireworks within the city limits. And that's what I'd like to make a motion of that.
So I have a motion to repeal this ordinance. Do I have a second? I do not, so motion will, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just
okay.
wondered if we could discuss it.
Only if there's a second.
Sure, I'll second it to discuss it.
So we have a motion to repeal and a second. Is there discussion on this motion?
Discussion on the motion to repeal?
Yes.
Okay.
And Derek, would you like to come and give us any information from the police department concerning this? Would you like to, do you have any input concerning this particular ordinance as far as the police department?
Captain Derek Spicer, Special Operations, Siloam Springs Police Department. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can. I don't have numerical value because I was not anticipating answering questions on this tonight, but I'll be more than happy to do my best, and if you have a question that I can't answer, then we will find out an answer, and I'll give it to Ms. Patricia, and we can forward it to the board. So,
I recall when this first got brought up, I think the police was asked, and we were told it's not like they need one more thing to do, but they would do whatever the board asked them to do, which is admirable and honorable. But I think they have more than enough going on than to have to chase firework shooters.
Madam
I
Mayor.
think what the mayor's asking is, would you explain to the audience why the chiefs asked that this ordinance be brought up to begin with? Was the reason for all of the calls that you were getting? It was going to cut down on the calls.
Sure. So what happens when you get close to the 4th of July is historically the officers on the street are continuously responding to, some will get called in as shots fired calls, some will get called in as fireworks calls, and generally what that amounts to is children playing in their driveways, playing in the streets. Less often than not is it something nefarious or something, inappropriate. It's just kids being kids. Occasionally we do deal with someone who's doing something they shouldn't be doing, but what it causes for the officers that are on the street is that responding to these fireworks calls is taking up a portion of their original duties, responding to calls or working traffic. So those days are usually a little busier for us. So what this ordinance did for us was it gave us a special window in which that we knew they were allowed to shoot off fireworks. So we were able to give our communications officers information to say, hey, look, if you receive a fireworks call, unless it's something that is dangerous or life-threatening or something like that, then the officers either won't respond due to call volume or they're within the legal limits of the ordinance. So that gave them the opportunity to shoot off fireworks within the city. So that relieved a little bit of pressure from the quite a bit of pressure from the police department. And I can't speak for the fire department. I'm sure Fire Marshal Kendall would be more than happy to answer questions, but that's where we're at from the police department aspect.
Madam Mayor.
Perfect, thank you. Yes. Mindy.
And that was my understanding as to why this was brought forth to begin with 3 or 4 years ago, just to maybe relieve some of the pressure on you all.
Yes.
My question is, I know you don't have the reports in front of you, but do you feel like the number of calls outside of the window where fireworks are allowed has been reduced? So now that people know they can shoot off fireworks for 2 or 3 days, are you not getting as many calls outside of those days, or?
We receive the calls generally once people start selling fireworks, regardless of whether it's in the city or outside the city, they're going to acquire their fireworks and they're going to shoot them, and kids are going to be kids. So without having the numbers right in front of me, in memory, I believe there was a reduction in the number of dispatch calls to fireworks calls, specifically fireworks calls. There was a decrease because we were operating within that time frame, and the officers were able to focus their attention on other things, especially around the 4th of July for intoxicated drivers, and we do our DWI saturations and things like that. So it allows us to do more things like that.
So it seemed like people were outside of the kids will be kids, and but it seemed like your impression was that people were waiting until the appropriate days for the most part, or not necessarily. Maybe just fewer that were shooting them off when they weren't supposed to.
From memory, I think that's a fair statement.
Okay.
Again, I can get those for you tomorrow and send those up. But yes, it took a lot of pressure off of the guys that are pushing that cruiser.
I guess the question is that with that being sort of the purpose, has that purpose been met?
I believe so, yes.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Carol.
My question is the same. I'm afraid if we disallow fireworks altogether, do you feel that you will still be going out on calls?
Yes.
Okay.
Without question. We'll go back to where we were a few years ago, to where we are obligated to respond to every call.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, it's my understanding that this actually benefits the police department and fire department as far as you being able to do your job consistently and be able to respond to higher priority.
Yes, sir. I believe it helps us greatly because we're able to respond and do our normal duties. We'll respond to those higher level calls rather than because the way law enforcement works is everything gets put in a tier as far as the most critical down to the least important. And I hate to say that because every call is important to the person making the phone call, and we understand that. But a fireworks call on the 4th of July as opposed to a domestic violence call is very low on the tier for us. So going back, then we would be obligated to respond to every fireworks
Thank
call.
you.
Thank you. Betsy?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
there may not be a solution, and so I like that it's working, the ordinance is working. For people like Mr. McGurk and others who have talked about it, is there any solution? I mean, it does sound like a war zone, and I don't know, is there a solution out there for people like that who don't want to be in the middle of it? I don't know.
I empathize with the gentleman. I have dogs that don't like fireworks as well. I have many, many veteran friends that don't like the fireworks, but they make accommodations on certain days to care for their dogs or to self-care in whatever manner that is, because they understand that from these hours, and what I believe this ordinance did was I believe this ordinance laid out certain hours where if I am that veteran or I am that dog owner, which I am, where I have to make sure my dogs are taken care of, that from these hours to these hours, that I have to make accommodations so that the rest of the community can enjoy the 4th of July or New Year's.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Carol.
As a dog owner, I do understand because my dog does freak out. And so we try to stay home, stay in the house with her. We actually have to tranquilize her.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know other people enjoy their fireworks.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't really like tranquilizing my dog, and I don't like her seeing her all upset, but that's what we've had to do.
Mindy?
And just for, I empathize with the dog owners. I remember when this got brought up a few years ago, reaching out to several people and just asking, what do you all think? And I was really kind of shocked that the overwhelming majority of people that I spoke with said, yes, we want fireworks in the city limits. So we did it. And it took a couple of years because I think COVID was in the middle of it. And then the first year after COVID, when we could shoot fireworks off, it was like a war zone. It did seem worse July 4th. And to go until midnight did seem a little extensive. So that, and I think even 11 would. So that's why I wanted to confirm that 10 o'clock was the actual cutoff, because for those who have to make accommodations, it's one thing to say, okay, maybe make accommodations for yourself and your pet until 10, but to make him go till midnight on possibly a work night, that was a concern for me. So hopefully we can find something that will work. But I do empathize with dog owners and with vets, and but I also understand the enjoyment people have. So, and I'm happy to hear that one of the main purposes for this, to alleviate the stress on the police force, has been met. So.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
I recall this was discussed from many angles, and my argument at the time was that, as we've heard here, that it's the kids that do it. My argument at the time is the kids are not going to be looking at the time, and they're going to still go past the deadline, because all the kids hear is, oh, we can do fireworks in the city now. I think there was no problem with it before. When I was a kid, you went outside the city limits, you went out on county roads, you went out to a bean field, and you shot them out there. I still come back to is it worth the risk of someone's home burning down or someone dying because we want to allow people to celebrate inside the city limits in neighborhoods around homes? And the biggest excuse for approving it at the beginning in the original discussion, because I think I was in the audience, was that we're helping the PD. We're helping the PD not have to respond to so many calls because it's going to happen anyway. But I agree, Mindy, it did sound like a war zone. After it was approved by this board, there were far more people shooting off fireworks than there had been before because people didn't do it knowing it was illegal. Suddenly it's legal, and now far more people want to do it. And it is about the enjoyment of fireworks and the sound and everything, shooting them off and the risk involved, et cetera, et cetera. But I get back to our number one goal as a city government is the safety of our citizens. And we should be looking at that rather than if it's going to cut the number of police calls. If we need to have more police, then we'll have more police. We should be looking at, is anyone going to be, if fireworks cause a fire or someone died, are we going to be sitting back saying, but at least the police didn't have to make any calls that night? Yes, we're cutting it back to 10, which is great. We don't have the people that are trying to get to sleep griping, which I've gotten. But the police are still going to have to go out after 10 o'clock, will they not? They will still have to go, and people are not going to stop at 10 o'clock just because we say that it's supposed to be. So after 10, the police will still have to be making the calls. I just believe that we're not looking at the priority of what we should be on opening up something like this for the public to shoot off fireworks in the city limits. I wish more people thought the way I thought.
Thank you, David. So.
That's funny, isn't it?
Madam
Can I have a
Mayor.
clarification?
I'm sorry.
Are we going to be voting on repealing
You're-
and this? Is
The,
that,
the motion before us is to repeal this ordinance. We have a motion and a second. Are we ready for a roll call?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Reed.
I want to say thank you to the police department and the fire department for the work that you've done on this and for your input on this as well. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
If
Jay.
I may, just for a point of clarification,
Yes,
make
sir.
sure I understand. This ordinance that's before the board now has never been adopted, so it can't be repealed. As I understand it, the motion is to amend this ordinance to repeal the ordinance that was adopted a few years ago. Now,
Okay, so
is
that's the
that-
motion we need.
Yes, I mean, I think I believe that follows the intent is to repeal the previous ordinance that
Okay.
authorized the fireworks in the city. And because this ordinance
It has not been
here,
adopted.
it's not adopted, so it can't be repealed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, everyone clear on that? What you're voting for is to repeal the ordinance that is currently on our books that has been adopted.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can you or Jay tell us what a yes means and a no means, please?
A motion to repeal, a yes vote is to do away with that ordinance. Is that correct?
Is to repeal the existing ordinance. That's
Right.
correct.
And a no vote means no, you want to leave it on place. And then we would go back to a second reading of the ordinance before you.
Thank you.
Everyone clear on that? Roll call.
Blair.
I guess now I'm not 100% clear. So if I vote no, then that means I'm disagreeing with repealing it.
That's correct.
Okay, no.
Smiley.
no.
Wiles is absent. Hunt.
No.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll.
No.
Motion fails. We will go back to the ordinance 23-08, placing it on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carroll.
Madam Mayor, can I ask or can I make a comment real quickly here? Just on the readings. That
Okay.
we're just voting to pass the reading on to the next.
That's correct. This is just the second reading.
We're
This is
not
not to
voting
adopt.
to adopt. Okay.
That's correct.
I think sometimes that gets a little confusing, so.
This is just the second reading. Roll call.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Ordinance.
Next, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, Christina. Got
Ord-
lost in the shuffle.
That's okay. Ordinance 23-08, an ordinance amending Chapter 38, Article 4 of the Siloam Springs City Code with respect to regulation of the sale and use of fireworks in city limits.
Thank you. Next, ordinance 23-09, second reading, vacation of utility easements, 3299 Highway 412 East. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board, Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. Before you is this second reading for closing of two 15-foot wide spans of a 20-foot wide perimeter utility easement at 3299 Highway 412 East. This is the vacant property that's located between Walmart and Lowe's. Since the last reading, staff has not received any additional comments from the public, and we continue to recommend approval, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Directors, comments or questions?
Ben, that is such a weird address. That's actually the address, even though it's far off the highway. That's just, I'm surprised it's still Highway 412 East.
That was the address on the parcel. Yes, sir. Yeah.
It's just weird because it's so far back off, and there's other businesses actually closer to the highway, so that's why I was just making a question.
Is it because there's not an actual named street between that piece of property and 412? Is that?
That's correct. 412 is the closest named street to the property.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience? Yes, sir. Please come and state your name and address.
Madam Mayor, board members, my name is Steve Harriman. I'm here as a representative of the applicant, Burke Collins and Company. Our address is 500 Grapevine Highway, Hurst, Texas 76054. What I would like to request that you approve our ordinance tonight, and if I may, if I'm allowed, I would respectfully like to request that you consider this is a second and third reading approval at the same time, if that could be allowed.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? If not, directors, I will come back to you. Any comments or questions?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Ben, did you say there were comments or no comments?
No comments.
No comments, thank you.
With that, I will ask if you would like to make a motion to place ordinance 23-09 on its second and third reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Blair.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance 23-09, an ordinance vacating and abandoning portions of two utility easement right-of-ways at 3299 Highway 412 East.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 23-09?
So moved.
Did we do both second and third?
Yes, sir.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know if we needed to do a third.
Yes, no.
All right.
The motion was
Okay.
for second and third.
Second.
So do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Errol and Reed have already made the motion in a second.
All right, we already have a
First or
motion
the
and a
second,
second.
I don't care.
Okay, we've got it. Roll call.
Smiley.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Ordinance 23-09 is adopted. Next is ordinance 23-10, first reading, amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from A1 to PD, the 2000 block of East Tahlequah Street. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of the board. So before you is a rezoning request, as the mayor stated, from A1 to PD. This is at the 2000 block of East Tahlequah Street. This is a 4.39 acre parcel. However, the usable part of the lot is about 3.03 acres when you remove the right-of-way areas on both Tahlequah and Sioux England Drive. Here you see the land survey that was provided with the application of the property in question. And as you know, with rezonings for PD, they do come with a concept plan that would basically give the idea of what was intended with the zoning. So what you're looking at is a townhome style development with commercial out on the end and parking back behind. These units will have their parking basically off of two driveways with the access from the rear, with the front facing would be facing onto Tahlequah Street with no parking or on-street parking allowed there. With this, I would like to just show the concept areas. So in your packet, there was a PUD document that should have been included that gave you planning concept for A and area A and area B. And so that's what this is showing you, is just the two different areas. And then the text that accompanies that. This is again taken from the PUD document that's already in your packet. But in summary, what you're looking at is area A is being intended for the townhomes, whereas area B is intended for a retail office component. The exact uses of those businesses not yet determined, but would likely be something that's supportive of the residents, future residents in this community. So as you may know, with the PD zone, that's different than other types of zone districts because the applicant is given the opportunity to make amendments to the actual zone standards tied specifically to a development request. And so their proposal is a reduction of the rear setback. So normally in PD, the rear setback is 25 feet. What they're requesting is 15 feet, as shown there on the text. And that I don't think will be an issue because if you've been up to the site, that's a very low area. It's a drainage channel, essentially. That's the southern part of the Sager Creek soccer complex. So it's not likely to ever be developed with anyone living in there. So that reduced setback should not pose any type of problem, in our opinion. So here, along with any type of rezoning request, we always want to show you the future land use map. And this is just to show you that the intention of this area is to be for a mixed use type of development, which would essentially be anything that's a mixture between commercial and residential, which this application would fit within that designation. And then finally, here is a proposed rendering of the units. This is looking south, so this would be if you're inside the interior of the development with looking at the garages, so the backs of these would then be facing onto Tahlequah. But it gives you a general idea of the vision of the architectural style, that type of thing, of what the applicant is wanting to do there. And then lastly, here is the property looking to the north. So at this point, you're just approving the zoning concept. So the applicant will need to come back before you again at a later date to review the particulars of the development. That will be through a significant development permit. The Planning Commission has reviewed this as well as staff, and we are recommending approval. of the rezoning with no needed conditions, and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Directors, comments or questions concerning this rezoning?
I've got a question, Ben.
Yes, David?
That swampy area north of this site just seems like a real problem for future flooding of these homes with a lot of rain. I mean, we can see in the picture that there's a bridge on Sioux England Drive, and it seems like a pretty wet area already, the actual site itself. Has there been a drainage study?
Not that I'm aware of. That would normally come in with the actual development plans. I will say that they are required to do an on-site detention basin and that type of thing that would prevent flooding of the development, and they also could possibly build it up with some fill that would prevent water incursions from the north. But that would all come in with the development. Yeah.
It's kind of worrisome looking at the overhead, well, that picture right there.
Yeah.
Just all the water that's north of it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone in the audience? If not, directors, I would ask if you for a motion to place ordinance 23-10 on its first reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 23-10, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, city zoning map, rezoning from A1 to PD, property located at the 2000 block of East Tahlequah Street.
Thank you. Next is our resolutions. Resolution 24-23, significant development permit, 3050 Cheri Whitlock Drive for the Siloam Springs School District. And Megan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Megan Thomas, Planner 1. This is a significant development permit request to construct a 20,399 square foot commercial building located at 3050 Cheri Whitlock Drive. This significant development permit request was previously approved by the Board of Directors on July 5th, 2022. However, the applicant is now requesting to revise the drainage plans for the development, and therefore the revision is required to undergo the significant development approval process again. The only changes to be made to the plans are related to the drainage for the site. No other changes have been made since the previous 2022 approval. On the screen is the previously approved site plan. I'll let you guys look at that. And this is the revised site plan. As you can see, nothing's really changed on it. It's all in this area that's kind of been affected for the drainage. And these are the elevations for the commercial building. And this is the overall site view of the property. You can see some of the site work that's already taken place since the previous approval. Staff is recommending approval of this request with one needed condition. The only condition is related to utility and drainage easements. These will need to be filed via separate instrument as directed by the city engineer. And staff is available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Directors, comments and questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Betsy.
I know we talked about new standards for drainage. Will those apply to this?
Kevin Moore, city engineer. Those new standards were not in place when this came through initially or for this new submittal either. Their reduction is to the pond right here in this area by about 50%. It was over-designed the first time it came through so that they could have more or less their own regional detention for possible future expansions, and so now they're reducing it to just what they need for this development.
Is it even because now they need reapproval? Is it possible to have them follow the new standards for drainage?
It's certainly possible. They applied before they would have applied at the beginning of April, before we even had that meeting with you all as a board, and then we still need to meet with engineers in the area to let them know that these changes will be enforced.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam
Anyone
Mayor.
else?
Madam Mayor.
David?
Is there any indication of, so what you're saying, what you circled was their original or what it is now?
That's what they're proposing. So they actually constructed the pond to the smaller size, and then staff found out and let them know that they would have to come back through our process for approval. So what they've built is about half the size of what you approved.
Okay. Is there a reason to allow it to be smaller than what was approved?
What was approved was larger than what they needed, like I said, for future expansions. So they, so now for any future additions they would choose to do, it would need its own detention.
I mean, you see a tremendous amount of land there south of this pond. If they don't intend to develop that, I mean, that obviously would have to either be a detention pond in the future or something done to it. So I'm just kind of lost as to why they would, or we would allow them to lower if they had originally thought that they were going to have expansion in the future. But you're saying they're going to the most to the minimum based upon what they have.
Correct.
That they're building.
For the building they're building now. And the portion to the south, they may or may not be able to use all of that, just depending on what's there wetland-wise and things like that as well. And then there'll also be the extension of Wisteria, the extension of that stub off of Progress. So this actually locates the pond out of that future right-of-way as well.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Reed.
Complete.
Yeah,
David?
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So really, they wanted to go overbuild so that if they were to expand, they wouldn't have to do so much with detention.
The next time around, correct.
They could utilize that for the expansion.
Yes.
But they're not looking at the expansion, they're looking to do just what they need to do for this.
Correct.
Okay, that makes good sense.
And Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If they expand, then they have to go back.
Yes,
And
they.
then have another retention pond.
That's correct.
Okay.
Kevin, they would have to come back to this board for approval, right? They would have to go through staff and back to this board for approval if they decide in the future for expansion.
Yes, for anything above that significant development threshold. Yeah, 5,000 square foot structure or 20,000 square feet of impervious area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
this may be irrelevant, but does the school district own most of that area, especially to the west of where they're building and over toward the high school? Do they own most of that?
I believe so, yes.
And is the new ball field going to go out in that area somewhere? Do you know?
I've not
I think
seen
the board recently
plans
approved.
for that.
Don knows. Again, I don't know whether that's relevant or not, but I'm just kind of wanting to know what their plans are for.
Don Clark, Community Development Director. Yes, so Director Allen, they also own that property to the west, and that was what their future growth could potentially inhibit. The area will also hold their baseball, softball facility.
Okay.
And so also I wanted to point out that by approving this, any changes that we recommended to you in our drainage criteria manual that we talked about the last workshop, any future expansion, that would be then the new standard they would have to bring it to.
Okay.
If that makes sense. There are some times where if you construct a pond and it's not operating efficiently, or things can change in the built environment. So them overbuilding and then now, actually building it to the size it needs to is not a concern of ours, because anything they bring back in the future, we'll make sure it meets the current standard.
Even if it's something like ball fields, which you and I both know can be very impacted by lots of water.
Right. So we've had discussions with the school already on that, and I've had their engineer get with our city engineer about the drainage plans for that area.
Good.
So
Okay.
we're already in discussions.
Working on it. Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
Don, I would just, well, you can answer or the engineer can answer. I was just going to say, where that swampy pond is now seems like where a good pond would go now, unless they intend to sell that or utilize that other property, since as we see the wisteria would separate the north from the south on this property here. I would think that if there was a chance of future expansion, they would not want that pond so close, the circle area so close to the building, that they would want it across where the street possibly could go. But of course, the street doesn't necessarily have to be expanded. But anyway, because it's already swampy, I would have thought that would have been their choice for a drainage pond.
Yeah. And Kevin can speak to that. I don't. And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's low lying and holding water today, doesn't necessarily means that it's the best or most conducive area to add more water to.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It just
Anyone
seems
else?
like that pond is so close to where they are now. I mean, the one they're building. But that's their decision. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone in the audience? If not, directors, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 24-23 for the significant development permit?
So moved.
Second.
And this will be with listed staff condition. Roll call.
Allen.
Do we need to state that it's with the, she's
She
putting
added it,
okay.
yes,
Just
sir.
put
She
it.
added it to the motion, yes.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next, Resolution 25-23, Significant Development Permit, 2000 block of Brashears Road, Agra Warehouse LLC. Megan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, this one's going to be a little longer. This is a significant development permit request to construct a 30,321 square foot warehouse building on 5.31 acres. This project is located at the 2000 block of Brashears Road. It should be noted that there is also a 29% parking reduction request included with this project. Information on that parking reduction request has been included in your staff report. Additionally, there is an associated lot consolidation plat for this project. The easements for that lot consolidation were accepted by the Board of Directors at the April 4th board meeting. On the screen is the site plan for the proposed warehouse building. Shown here is the zoning line for the lots. The lot farthest to the west is zone C2 currently. It should be noted any future expansion of the development onto this west lot will require a rezoning request. The proposed detention area for the development is also shown here to the west in this area. As a condition of approval, an updated drainage analysis for the drainage improvements shall be approved by the city engineer prior to building permit issuance, and the applicant will be required to file drainage and utility easements via separate instrument prior to certificate of occupancy issuance. As you can see, the project is proposing to construct a drive along Brashears Road here. This drive will include a crosswalk for better pedestrian mobility and does meet the minimum I-1 driveway standards. Additionally, they are proposing to construct a sidewalk along both Brashears Road and North Country Club Road. The sidewalk will tie into the development using a ramp system shown here. Shown here to the west of the proposed drive is the proposed dumpster location. As a condition of approval, the City Sanitation Department must approve the final dumpster location and sizing prior to building permit issuance. Again, the applicant is requesting a 29% parking reduction with this proposal. The applicant has verified the number of future employees as well as the occupancy load of the conference room to justify the reduced parking requirements. Staff is in support of this parking reduction request as it will reduce the total percentage of impervious area on the site, provided the proposed land use does not change. Shown here to the northeast of the site is a turnaround for fire apparatus access. As an additional condition of approval added at the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant is required to maintain the 30-foot landscape buffer along the northern property line and maintain proper fire apparatus access to the building. On the screen is the revised site plan showing that condition being met. You can see they still have the 30-foot landscape buffer there. The fire marshal has confirmed, based upon the building being fully sprinkled, this alternative does meet the fire code. This is the landscape plan for the proposed development. They are showing trees along all sides of the site as well as interior parking lot landscaping. You can also see the revised fire apparatus here with the 30-foot landscape buffer provided. And these are the elevations for the proposed structure. And this is the zoning map, so you guys can see that zoning a little more clearly. Again, the lot to the west will be required to rezone if there is a future expansion onto it. And this is the overall site view of the property. Staff is recommending approval of this request with 6 needed conditions. The first condition is pertaining to the need to file drainage and utility easements via separate instrument as directed by the city engineer prior to certificate of occupancy issuance. The second is regarding the need for an updated drainage analysis for the drainage improvements. This shall be approved by the city engineer prior to building permit issuance. Third, the applicant must provide a photometric plan that complies with all exterior parking lot lighting standards prior to building permit issuance. Fourth, the dumpster sizing and location details must be approved by the city sanitation division prior to building permit issuance. Finally, at the April Planning Commission meeting, there was 2 additional conditions of approval added. The first being a condition regarding the need to file the associated lot consolidation plat prior to building permit issuance. The second being the applicant shall maintain a 30-foot landscape buffer along the northern side of the property and maintain proper fire apparatus access to the building as shown on the building plan set prior to building permit issuance. This condition has been met per the revised site plan that was just presented to you. Staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Directors, comments, questions? Being none, anyone in the audience? If not, I'll come back to directors and ask if I have a motion to approve Resolution 25-23 with staff listed conditions.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is Resolution 26-23, Final Plat Development Permit for Mission Hills Subdivision, Phase 1, 5,000 block of North Country Club Road. Megan?
Y'all didn't give me much time to breathe.
No, ma'am.
Okay. This is a final plat correction for Mission Hill Phase 1, located at the 5,000 block of North Country Club Road. The request is to revise the previously approved final plat in order to correct a pre-existing fence encroachment to the north of the subdivision. The previous final plat for this development was approved by the Board of Directors at the July 5th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting. On the screen is the previously approved final plat. It's kind of really hard to see on that TV there. But that is the previously approved one. This is simply showing you the area of the Phase 1 that was to be revised. The only change to be made to this final plat is shifting this property line shown here to the south to concede to the existing fence line. And this is the revised survey, so you can see that that line has now been shifted down south. And this is a drone image of that fence encroachment, so you can see what I'm talking about. The red line is indicative of the existing property line, so you can see that fence is currently encroaching into their property. So this revision is simply to correct that error. And this is the overall site view of the property. Again, the lots to the northwest, lots 1 through 8, are the only lots to be impacted by this change. Nothing else on the survey is changing. Staff is recommending approval of this request with 1 needed condition. The applicant shall file the plat at the Benton County Circuit Clerk's office and provide 1 filed copy to the city within 45 days of the board acceptance of this plat. And staff is available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
And before we move on, I know that there has been some questions about the drainage. Kevin, do you have any comments or any additional information that would be impacted or changed by what we're doing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kevin Moore, City Engineer. I don't have any additional comments. I'd like to hear what the homeowners have to say and possibly respond to those if you'd like. The only thing I'll mention is that this was previously approved, and the only change is to yield to the fence line of the subdivision to the north. Nothing's changed with the drainage. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, with that, comments or questions? If not, is there anyone in the audience? Yes, sir. Please come to the mic and state your name and address.
Hi, Clayton Taylor, 21865 Davidson Road. I'm at the corner of Davidson and Country Club, and my property is currently affected by the drainage that's been put in for Mission Hill Subdivision. And so I'm opposed to anything being passed by the board until they get it fixed. We're currently, my property is between Mr. Farmer's and the Sled's property, which both adjoin the property, where they've put in for their detention pond a weir where the water exits that pond, which is a good 80% of the property now is fed into this one pond. It goes between the Farmer's and the Sled's property and then comes out at my property at Davidson Road. And at that section, because of the flooding in the past, all of the water before they got the weir in and the continued flooding now with every rain we get, that spot at Davidson Road and my driveway is filled with silt and has become a pond in itself. It's been 6 days since the last rain, and today, right now, if you walk out there, there's water and clay that you're going to sink into. So we have damage to my driveway where it met Davidson Road. Roush Coleman did come out and fix it. But my question is, since it's still flooding in that area, a year from now, because it's already eroding again between the concrete, the concrete that was laid and the asphalt, you've got soft asphalt, hard concrete, it's going to create a channel through there. It's already separating. And so next year, who pays for that? Am I going to have to put in a new driveway system down where this erosion's going on? Not only that, but from the corner of where the pond is through the 3 properties, we've got increased erosion. I wasn't able to attend the meeting on the 18th, the flood meeting workshop that you had, but I did watch it online, and I know that Mr. Moore stated, because you used this as an example, that there's 4 times as much water coming down that little, it was a little runoff creek before, very small little creek. Well, with 400% more water going through it, which I think is a conservative estimate, there's a lot more than that going through there. But you've got 400% more water going through, 400% more erosion. It's just, there's nowhere for this water to go except to stop there at my property. It does make a 90-degree turn and head down towards Country Club. But at the corner of Davidson and Country Club, if anybody's tried to drive out there with almost any rain that we've had lately, that whole corner, that intersection is flooded. Or at least there's some standing water there, which is a problem. And I think the biggest problem that I have with it myself is that area between the 3 properties. I've already got mosquitoes out there and can't set at night. The mosquitoes are unbelievable, which is a health hazard. And so I think that we need to address the problems that they've created before we let them go on and continue to build the rest of the subdivision.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, can you tell us where's your house? What's you said the quarter of Davidson?
Okay, so if you're looking at Country Club here on the right-hand side, where it goes up right at the end of the property, where you can see the woods, where she's got the fence line straight across.
The red circle?
Except go east of there, where Country Club is. So their retention, I know I can't get up there really.
Yeah.
It's that north, you see the clear cut.
Yeah.
The northeast corner of the clear cut. The first house there is the Sleds. The Farmer's is the next one to the left, and there's a little teeny creek that goes through, and I'm right on the corner of Country Club and Davidson.
Okay, so you're on the corner of Country Club and Davidson.
Yes, I am on the west corner of Country Club in Davidson.
So as you come down that hill towards Country Club,
Yes.
if you're driving on Davidson.
If I'm on Davidson, right where Davidson turns into a county dirt road, gravel road,
Yeah.
I'm that first house, the blue house that's sitting there, the ranch.
Thank you, sir.
I have driven Davidson Road, and it is a concern. I did have a question. Isn't Davidson Road going to be paved soon?
I don't know. They've come out 3 or 4 different times and put flags out, but my understanding is that right now it's a...
Kevin, do you know, or Don? There's another housing addition going in further down Davidson that was a requirement that they, either the developer or the county was paving Davidson Road. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The developer for Castlewood, which is off here to the west, will be paving Davidson Road all the way to Country Club. And then Mr. Taylor's property is right in through here. There's a house directly by the detention pond, and then the next one north is Mr. Taylor's property.
I've driven down Davidson all the time to go to Gentry, and it's a mess. It's a huge, huge mess. And I was pleased to hear it's going to be paved. I just don't know if it's going to solve any drainage problem.
Unless they do some major work there, it's going to solve nothing, because my house is a little bit lower. The county does not have a drain from the top of the hill, which is the farmer's property, which is just to the left of the red circle that Mr. Moore just drew. There's a hill. It comes down, so you've got one property and then mine. There is not a cut that puts it into the drain, so I've gone out there with the shovel and kind of dug it to dig it out. So that water, unless they've maintained something, is going to end up in this exact same spot.
And it also seems to narrow as you go down the hill.
It definitely does.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
And speaking of it, I don't know who's doing the other construction on that right now. We've got probably, it's the same 3 trucks, but I would say there's got to be 60 trips a day between the 3 trucks. Right now on Davidson, up and down, and the dust out there is unbelievable. I mean, it's killing us almost completely. That's not this subdivision that we're talking about going to pave the road, is it? That's doing all the construction right now? It is? Well, I thought they were supposed to pave the road before they started the heavy work on the construction. So we're going to have, the entire time they put in the subdivision, we're going to have to live with those trucks back and forth and kicking up all that dust. Anybody that wants to come out there, there is that much dust on my plants and everything else. I mean, they're not even blooming this year, some of them, because it's ridiculous how thick it is. Why? I mean, that's a health hazard in itself, and I don't understand how that could go on too. So I guess that's another problem. I'm concerned with this problem.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think
Jeff.
Dr. Jeff Farmer was going to come and speak.
Yep.
Jeff Farmer, 21923 Davidson Road, here in Siloam. I just want to let you know that I've got a dog in this fight too, because I've got a parcel of property right there next to my neighbor, Clayton. And it's probably got a 30 by 50 erosion damage to it right now. Now it is a drainage ditch. I realize that, but it is mine. And the more water that comes down through there, it seems like every single shower we get now turns into a torrent, where we used to have this problem every 5 years, 6 years. Seems like we have it at every rain, every shower that we have has a torrent of water that comes down through here. And when you look at what kind of drainage they put in the subdivision to this retention pond, you can understand how much water actually goes through there, where we used to have just a average drainage. We've got probably, it's an estimation, I'm going to say 400 times more than we had before. And in talking to, I think his name was David Ellis. He is an engineer or something for Roush Coleman there. They haven't put up any kind of privacy fences for light pollution, headlight pollution, or anything like that coming through the backyard, coming through our backyards. Now the street lights seem to be fine. They don't really cause a big shadow problem or anything like that. but they haven't put up any privacy fences to knock off any of the light or anything like that, plus the drainage problem that they've got. Just wanted to reiterate something that the things that Clayton had said. Now, the when you were talking about paving Davidson Road, that's another issue. But they've come out and staked, but nothing has been done as far as what they had on their resolution page. Everything was supposed to be done prior to construction. Well, construction has started, and all the trucks, all the 10-wheel dump trucks, all the 18-wheel dump trucks, plus all the support vehicles, 18-wheelers with excavators and things like that. They're running up and down the road, and it'll be the next thing, and the next thing you know, Davidson Road will be in bad shape from all the traffic or whatever. But from what I understand, they were supposed to have this done before they did start any kind of construction or anything. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Jeff. So, directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
Don or Kevin, do you guys remember? I remember when the Castlewood came up. Do you guys remember, was the street supposed to be paved first, or was it even delineated as to which would come first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know.
I believe Don's looking that up right now. I don't recall if it was. My recollection is that the right-of-way had to be acquired before the remainder of the construction, but nothing as far as starting asphalt prior to that point.
I just was pleased that at least for a development to be going in, that at least that street was at least partway going to be paved to cut all of the problems with, there's rock and gravel, and every time there is any kind of a rain, not to mention the dryness with the dust in the summer, that road would fix that. And I do realize as you top that hill and come down towards that intersection, I've wondered for years why the county has not widened that section, because it does narrow very dangerously. But that doesn't have anything to do with this right here. That's a separate thing. I was just curious about it. I guess it's all connected in a way, in that Davidson residents back up to this Mission Hills.
Madam Mayor.
Red section, the red circle you guys have circled right there. That's the part that you're saying they infringed upon the ownership, or I got a little confused.
Absolutely. So the subdivision to the north, their fence line infringes down onto Mission Hill subdivision, and so rather than trying to fight that out in some way, they're yielding to the fence line.
Okay.
And if I'm correct, that is all that we're looking at tonight, is just to allow that fence adjustment. Is that correct? Because it's already actually been approved as far as the final plat, just so we're clear. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Director Carroll may have had a question, so I'll let him go first if he has a question. Did you have?
Madam Mayor, I was going to make a comment that, what we're hearing is not part of what we're addressing with this resolution, but I would like to ask that Christina appoint, or Dawn take a look into this to make sure we're doing what we need to be doing as a city to help with the drainage and the construction of the project. Because we need not only look for today, but also down the road, 5 years, 10 years, what have you, and see how we can best help our citizens.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mindy.
And that's essentially what I was going to say. I understand that we are looking at a different issue, but I also want to acknowledge that we're hearing some concerns about the drainage, and I understand that that was something that was approved before any kind of new possible drainage plans. So I do have a question about legal ramifications for making requirements after something's been approved, just in general.
Jay, that's a question for you.
So I didn't get the part that's the question.
In general, if we have approved a significant development plan and then later we change some policies that we would like to actually go back and place on a development, are there legal ramifications for doing that if we've already approved a plan?
Once approved is approved, essentially. So there is no mechanism for going back and putting additional requirements or changing the approval by the board. Now, the applicant can come forward, as they're doing here, and ask to change some aspect, but that is the only thing that would be under consideration, is just what they're asking for.
And is the applicant aware of the concerns that the neighbors have with the additional drainage into their properties?
Can you repeat that one more time, make sure I answer correctly?
Is the applicant aware of the issues that the neighbors are having currently with the extra drainage?
Yes, okay. I believe they are. I will also say that, staff had been contacted prior to. I don't know if we've been contacted since until this came up at the Planning Commission, but we're more than happy to go out and look at the area. A couple of things I want to bring to light is the Castlewood addition was approved with 5 conditions of approval, and I'll read those off just for everybody's recollection. The applicant must acquire any needed right-of-way to improve Davidson Road to county road standards from the western boundary of the subject property to North Country Club Road. The applicant shall acquire off-site utility easement for sewer and water extension as needed via separate instrument prior to beginning construction. That has been met. The applicant must sign a pre-annexation agreement with the city prior to any extension of city-operated utilities to the subject property. The applicant shall connect to city electric services prior to any final plat acceptance. The applicant shall execute a development agreement for the Castlewood subdivision prior to final plat approval. Again, that's the subdivision that's to the west. I also like to point out that if that subdivision, the only way that county road is getting improved because it was placed upon that subdivision to improve it. The county was not going to pave that road anytime soon. And so I can also turn this over to Kevin, but Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, that those improvements will also include some maybe culverts that are not there today that's causing the washout. If you recall, when we discussed that, when we were approving Castlewood, we talked about some of the issues that were there at that intersection. And when it got, where the water was going to today, that will also be improved, I believe. So without Castlewood, those improvements wouldn't happen. I don't believe it is standard for them to construct the roadway prior to putting in their infrastructure. I don't think we can require that of them, as it was not a part of their approval. At this point, it is, again, it's not typical. We can that's in a county area, so it's under their permits, am I correct? So I don't think our building division has any say. We can talk to the county and ask them to meet with those developers and ask if they will take a water truck in absence of rain to kind of keep the dust down. Again, that's just a request that we can make. That parcel we're talking about has not annexed in yet, so it's not in our city limits. It's just in what we call our extraterritorial jurisdiction, which all we have to say over that is the Boken area requirements and nothing else. So if there are still some issues with Mission Hill, we have no problem going out and meeting with Mr. Clayton or Mr. Farmer and make sure we understand that. The developer of Mission Hills is here, can speak to if they would be willing to look at fixes. But I think we're all amenable to, when it's brought to our attention, we go look at the problem. And so we would do the same here, and I'll follow up with them to make sure they have our information so we can do so.
Thank you, Don.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Don. Yes.
Don, did I understand, you said the 5 requirements or whatever, was the first one that they're building, paving the street?
The first requirement was that they get the needed right of way. Okay. So they had to acquire the right of way to be able, because in a lot of cases the right of way would have been dedicated. In this case, they had to go out and get it on their own, which means they have to negotiate with those property owners and purchase that property on their own. And I believe that's what's taking place.
Okay. So where was there a actual condition that they are paving the street?
They have to pave it, but there's no condition that says it must be done prior to them starting to put in their infrastructure under the preliminary plat phase.
I wouldn't expect a developer to do it because otherwise their trucks are going to ruin the pavement. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But it will have to be completed for any final plat acceptance. Am I correct, Ben?
Okay.
Correct. Okay. So when it comes back to you for final plat, Castlewood, similar to this, that has to be completed.
Now this tonight is final plat development permit, but what I'm hearing is it's already been approved. What's been the significant? Is this the final?
So
is there a previous final and this is an adjustment?
Exactly. So there was a previous final plat development that the board approved. Okay. They're having to, there was an error, so this is to make that adjustment. And so to Director's Hunt point and to what Jay said, this is kind of outside of that. We're really just talking about that area. But again, staff will go out and make sure we understand what the drainage concerns are.
There's another picture that actually shows where the drainage ponds are on the northeast and southeast corners of the entire development. But those are the only ponds that are there, right, Kevin? I think, unless there's some we don't. Because the picture that we have here is just kind of about 3/4 of the development. There's not any other ponds on the other part of the property, is there?
That's correct. So phase one, if you look at this paved portion,
yeah,
this is essentially phase one. And then you have a pond here on the south,
right,
and then the pond here on the north.
Yeah, but there's not any expected additional ponds like for phase two or anything, is there?
No,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
So, and just to speak to the drainage a little bit on Davidson Road, ditches will be going in alongside the street improvements, as well as culverts beneath each of the driveways. As they're crossing, those culverts will be upsized from what they are today. I believe all of them will be. I know for a fact that Mr. Taylor's culvert will be upsized. So part of the issue he's fighting is that as the water comes down that hill, the ditch goes away, and so it just spills onto his property and combines with the water coming off of Mission Hill and doesn't have anywhere to go.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Betsy.
I like the water truck idea. A citizen had that. So basically everything's been approved except for the fence. Sorry, I don't feel well. I only stayed, so there'd be 5 of us, so I'm a little slow. So they've been approved. However, their construction, what they're doing is ruining citizens' property. So even though they've been approved, are they not responsible for the destruction they're causing by the building they're doing and the rerouting and all of that?
Right. So I believe they are responsible for any destruction that they would cause. Where you draw that line would kind of be based on the perspective of each of the parties involved. I do think that, and I've not been involved in all the conversations between Mr. Taylor and the developer, but my understanding is that since they constructed that driveway, it's not washed out again since. That all happened prior to the outlet structure and stuff being constructed. And then the flat portion on his property, my understanding is that there were 2 trees or bushes right next to where that culvert is that he did not want removed. And so that's part of where the bowl kind of catches that. It may be possible if he were amenable to having those removed, that could be graded back into his property to prevent the bowl. I can't speak to those conversations that may have been had.
He did mention that it was starting to erode again, so it was a temporary fix.
Don Clark, Community Development Director. That's why we would suggest we go out and look before we say what's happening, because standing here today, can't be 100% sure. Want to spend the time with Mr. Taylor to make sure we understand what his concerns are, and then we can decide what we may or may not be able to do at that point in time. Anything short of that would be a little premature, and we don't want to make promises to you guys or to him yet until we go look at the problem and make sure we understand what's happening currently when it rains, and then make a determination of what could be done to maybe mitigate the issues. Again, this has been approved, and so what we need to go back and do, and what we will go back and do, is look and see what was approved. Is it functioning correctly? And that's what we will go look at and doing. Also, if you recall, when we brought Castlewood, that's why we wanted those culverts upsized, because we knew of Mr. Taylor's problem and the problem at the corner as well. Again, without Castlewood and it's not being improved, I don't think that changes a lot of what we've seen, unless that street is paved. Once it's paved, it will assist in that area. But that would be my suggestion, is that we allow us the time to go and visit with Mr. Taylor and Mr. Farmer, stand in their yard and look at it to make sure we're not making any assumptions before we say what we think.
Okay, and I appreciate that, because they're not in the city limits, correct?
Nope, but we would definitely go and look, because there's a development in the city limits could be causing issues.
Right,
Right.
And that's my concern, because they were approved, but I assume it's understood in approval that whatever they do should not be detrimental to the areas around them.
Correct.
And it sounds like this possibly is. So I appreciate you going out once again to look at it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And so then, Christina, I am assuming then that we are directing you to see that this is relooked at, if you will, and that
Yes, I will make sure, and I will attend when they go out and look at the property.
Thank you, ma'am. So, with that, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 26-23, the final plat development permit, Mission Hills?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carol.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you all. And Mr. Taylor and Mr. Farmer, thank you all for being here. At this time, we'll move to our staff reports. Christina, we have the March financials and then your administrator's report.
March financial statements were included with the agenda. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding those statements. Expenditures in excess of $30,000 include $33,263.73 for 131 straight 90-degree and splice connectors. This is for electric inventory. $36,075.76 was spent on 8,000 gallons of aviation fuel. Purchases per resolution 43-22, $97,920 was spent on 80 30-foot mounting direct bury poles, and these are, I believe, the green poles for the street lights. The Utility Commission went on a tour of sanitation, wastewater, the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant on April 21st. The Dogwood Festival was last weekend, and I would like to echo Arthur's thanks to city staff, but also to the chamber for making that a success. The Parks and Recreation Division will be holding a tree giveaway sponsored by the Walton Family Foundation this Saturday, May 6th. in the parking lot across from the library from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And the update memo, I'm not sure if you've noticed yet, has been rebranded as Connect Siloam Springs, and that will hopefully help connect the city with the community a little better. Early voting started today on the question of a proposed 44.9 mills for the school tax for Siloam Springs School District, and this is the rate that is presently being collected, so there's no increase there. The all-city meeting is scheduled for this Friday, May 5th at Fire Station 1. Again, the board is invited. And this is not on your sheet, but in case you missed it, the electric director, Phil Stokes, received the Pruitt Lamb Lifetime Achievement Award during the 2023 MISO Public Power Conference in Tulsa. And that award recognizes an individual who's contributed to the growth of their organization over the lifetime of their professional career. So, kudos.
Thank you very much, Christina. So with that, we will move into our director's reports. I would like to also say thank you to our chamber and our city staff for a great Dogwood Festival. It turned out that we had beautiful weather, and I will tell you that there was a gentleman in talking to Bobby and I at the bank, and he made the comment that he was down there and was just amazed at the people and said he kind of wanted to get a little better view. So he kind of took some of the steps up on the cliff there, and he said it was just a massive humanity. It was amazing. He said, I wish I'd had a drone view of the people that were here. So it was an exciting time for our city, and we appreciate all of that. And we look forward to the one next year. And also, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Christina, we are beginning to get more of our transformers in. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
And that's good news for our electric department and our subdivisions being built. So thank you all for that. So with that, I will move to the director's reports. And Mindy, we will start with you. And David, we will end with you.
Okay. I was not at the last meeting, but I was able to watch the storm drainage workshop online, and I appreciate city staff, Kevin and Dawn, and whoever else was involved with that, Steve, I believe, for making that possible so that we can understand a little bit about what's going on. A couple takeaways, which I've suspected for quite a while, and in fact, we even got this information 3 or 4 years ago. We're just getting a lot more rain these days. But we have to be prepared for that. And I appreciate the staff's willingness to not only be proactive in planning future development, but even go back and consider some of the issues that we've been having to see what can be done from the city's perspective to fix some of those issues. I echo the congratulations for Phil Stokes and his Lifetime Achievement Award. That's excellent representation for the city. Also, the thank you to the chamber and the city staff for yet another successful, fun Dogwood Festival. Kudos to Megan Whitworth and her excellent work on communicating the city happenings with the citizens through the new publication that Christina mentioned called Connect, but she's also just done an excellent job with social media posts, and we are very fortunate that she accepted the position here in Siloam. Also looking forward to Fourth Fridays. Starting in May. Been seeing a lot of social media posts about that. I think that's going to be a great addition to Siloam. And I wasn't here last time to thank the sanitation department for spring cleanup. We took advantage of it. Actually, by the time they got to our house, they probably didn't have to pick up much because you know what they say, one man's junk is another man's treasure, and apparently our junk was a treasure, and I'm very thankful for that. If someone needed it, I'm very thankful they found it. But anyway, I do appreciate, I understand there was just tons and tons, again, picked up, and that is an excellent service that not every city has, so thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Betsy?
First of all, I want to thank staff, which I think they're gone. Christina's not. I've gotten to spend a lot of time with Christina. She's very nice, by the way, going out to drainage issues. So I really appreciate everything that's been doing to work towards that, because a lot of it's going to come before the board for a lot of adjustments and things, because I think we're close to 40 places around town that have drainage issues. So, yeah, so I just, that means a lot. I appreciate that. I don't know, as far as my vision for the future, it's always been the things that I campaigned on. I don't have some secret agenda. I keep hearing that, but nobody will tell me what my secret agenda is. So, yeah, and thank you again for another awesome Dogwood Festival. Arthur does a great job. And for Fourth Fridays coming up this month, which I think is an awesome combination of the city, the chamber, and Main Street putting that together. So lots to look forward to, and y'all are gonna be happy. I haven't been out and about a whole lot the last week or so, so I have no new awesome places to tell you about. So that's it for the night. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kudos for the Dogwood Festival. Always glad to see that. And I know we've got Main Street coming up and gonna disco the night away, I guess, on that one. But I'm really looking forward to Farmers Market coming in Saturday morning. That's a highlight for me. I think next Tuesday we have a vote going on. And yeah, Christina mentioned early voting. But be a citizen and do your part. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Carol?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm looking forward to the Fourth Friday, which begins on May 26th. And congratulations to Phil Stokes. I'm looking forward to the Lake Francis rebuild because I drive that street a lot. There's a school board vote on, I can't remember, I think it's the 9th. I can't remember what the date is. It's what? Next Tuesday. And the tree giveaway. Congratulations to all the graduates. I know there's going to be a lot of graduating seniors going on, whether it's elementary, high school, JBU. I want to thank the Chamber and the city staff for the Dogwood Festival and everyone that participated, those that helped park cars or whatever you did. I've talked to several of the vendors, and they were all pleased with the turnout that they were having at their booths. So that is, I think that is it.
Okay.
Oh, and the tree giveaway, I think I already mentioned that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And David, before I get to you, I just have one more thing. I want to let the citizens know that I will not be at our next board meeting. I will be on vacation and out of town. So our Vice Mayor, David, will be handling the meeting, and I'm sure he's done this before, so I'm sure he'll be able to do it again. So thank you for that. And David?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to give a congratulations to Phil Stokes on his award, and I want to give congratulations on another successful Dogwood Festival to our Chamber of Commerce staff, and most especially to the hardworking board of directors, because as a lot of people don't know, it takes the entire board of the chamber to work the Dogwood Festival. They have positions they are assigned or requested, and they get heavily involved, and it's not a weekend of fun for them, it is a weekend of working, and they do a lot of work. The staff does a lot of work. Arthur, we're appreciative of the staff, we're appreciative of our Chamber of Commerce, we're appreciative of the board of directors, because there's a tremendous amount of preparation that goes into getting a successful Dogwood Festival going, and you guys work on this. I mean, I know next week you'll be working on next year's. So that's just the way it goes, and it's a big, big boon to our city. It brings in tens of thousands of visitors, and we're appreciative to it. It's frustrating to see the complaints about downtown businesses upset about their parking being taken. These are people coming in to spend money, and the city gets tax revenue from that. So it's frustrating to see any complaints. There's just far too many great things happening in Siloam for there to be negativism about something as wonderful as the Dogwood Festival. So it's frustrating to see or hear that. I want to give appreciation to the Utility Commission that we have appointed, and they're already working, touring and learning. That's the big thing, is that the Utility Commission is, every member, there's 5 of them, are learning everything about how a city sells its services, as well as where those services come from. And so I appreciate each one of them for giving their time and the amount of hard work that they're already putting into this. I have a fan that shows up and gives me these Bible verses, and they mean so much to me. I really appreciate it. It's disconcerting, though, I got to tell you, to hear a request that only the bad 4 directors who voted for termination of the administrator's contract be called out for giving direction, their future direction of the city. Not the other 3. That was the quote. Not the other 3. Just the 4. Really says a lot. It says that not really asking for that information as much as seeking ammunition to remove the 4 board members who are, it was quoted, undermining our city government. I see exactly the opposite, and I hear it from people every day, how wrong this small group of people is, and how wrong it is that they cannot wait for the normal democratic process to remove duly elected city representatives of this board of directors. It's a sad state of affairs. I've never seen it in my life. And it is sad and frustrating. Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.